The Milwaukee Bucks have traded for Damian Lillard, and while there's tons of reasons off the floor why Milwaukee had to do this, had to try and keep Giannis happy, had to try and contend, what does this look like on the floor? Why did Milwaukee have to make this move in terms of the actual basketball of it all? Primarily for me, this centers around Jrue Holiday, a player that ironically they traded for to try and keep Giannis happy in the first place a couple of years ago, and it was successful. They won a title largely because of the addition of Jrue Holiday, but over the years and most recently and most importantly last postseason, Jrue Holiday has become exactly what they traded for him to try and replace. Now this is the primary issue with Jrue Holiday in Milwaukee. You can see that there's just absolutely no attention being paid to him at all offensively. Giannis isn't even on the floor. The defense can actually afford to help more towards Jrue Holiday. There's not as many threats on the floor. This is a Javon Carter, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, Wes Matthews, Jrue Holiday lineup on the floor, and they're just not concerned about him whatsoever. Yes, they close out. Yes, they contest, but that much space for an offensive player shows that the defense is just really not that worried about what you're going to do from a spacing perspective, and certainly this is not how teams are going to act when Damian Lillard is out there, and this amount of limited spacing has been an issue for Jrue Holiday really all of last season. Now on the surface, it's not a massive deal, but when teams start to recognize that this is the guy that they can afford to leave open, look at Jimmy Butler actively make the right decision, run to the corner to take care of Grayson Allen, and leave Jrue Holiday, one of the highest paid players on the team, a guy they traded multiple first-round picks for. That's the guy they're leaving alone. That's the guy that Giannis is being forced to kick the ball out to. Look, Jimmy sees, okay, I have to pick one of these two guys. I'm going to go pick the guy that's now in Phoenix that actually can shoot the ball. I'm not worried. If I have to choose, they are totally fine. Look at how they look when Jrue Holiday takes this shot. Not concerned in any way about him threatening them from three-point range. Now, not only does that obviously hurt you in terms of him not making the shots, as he missed every single one of those threes I showed, but this is really the issue. Look at how much attention Giannis is getting in the post. They're digging in. Obviously, they've got Bam guarding him, and it's only because of Jrue. Wes Matthews is fine. Grayson Allen is good. Chris Middleton is good. They got to pick one guy, and they pick Jrue Holiday. And this happens time and time again. Now, in this scenario, he doesn't even get the kick out. It's just a tougher two-point attempt and ultimately a miss for Giannis in the postseason here. This is an issue when you're trying to surround your star with good spacing and when you're trying to surround him with a team that could potentially win a championship. Now, from this point on, I want you to think about this player as it relates to this potentially being Damian Lillard. This isn't Jrue Holiday anymore. This is Damian Lillard. Do you think there's any scenario in which Miami is guarding this situation in this way if this player right here is Damian Lillard? There's a 0% chance they're giving Dame that much space. And this whole concept of let's build a wall against Giannis in transition, that concept is much harder to execute when you've got one of the best shooters in the entire league standing over here on the wing. But when it's Jrue Holiday, you can see that's really not that much of an issue for Miami. They're able to contest the shot and deal with it. Giannis is a good passer. If this is Dame, he sees this guy, he kicks it out, and it's a great look for a great shooter. One of the greatest shooters we've ever seen in the history of the league. But instead, they're able to dig in on Giannis and force a miss. Same scenario here, just not in transition. Again, these are in playoff games. These are the biggest possessions of the year. Caleb Martin does not care about Jrue Holiday, doesn't know that he exists, thinks that there's 4 people on the floor on offense. His numbers went down so dramatically in the postseason last year, and his confidence was so low from three-point range that this is what you were dealing with. The Bucks were essentially playing 4-on-5, assuming the other guys on the floor could shoot on offense. And at times they were able to make it work, and other times they weren't. Now, as we go back in time, the irony of this is they actually brought in Jrue Holiday to fix this problem partially in the first place. This is not Jrue Holiday. I know the spacing looks similar. This is a couple of years ago. This is Eric Bledsoe in Milwaukee. This is the guy they traded away and replaced with Jrue Holiday, not completely to fix the spacing issues caused by Bledsoe, but to improve that spot as a whole. Jrue Holiday, even with the issues I was just showing you, is a better offensive player than Eric Bledsoe, a better spacer than Eric Bledsoe, and certainly was that when Milwaukee traded for him. These kinds of things is what they were trying to avoid. They've got Giannis, they've got a shooter, they've got a shooter, they've got a shooter, and they've got one guy on the floor that nobody's paying attention to. That kind of disrespect from a perimeter player is just not something that you're going to be able to tolerate to create great postseason offense, especially when you're a team like Milwaukee that relies so much on Giannis getting to the rim and having great spacing. And I can show clip after clip after clip of this being an issue, just missing wide open jumpers, really not being a factor at all offensively. Here's Eric Bledsoe again. I know that the ball's on the other side of the floor, but again, it's funny that the Heat are involved in this so much considering their potential involvement in the Dame trade in the first place. Jimmy Butler doesn't know, he has no idea that Eric Bledsoe is on the floor in any way. They actually give up an open jumper to George Hill, doesn't matter. Okay, let's tap the ball out. Hey, shoot the ball, please. That's the best thing you can do for us is shoot the ball. Of course, Eric Bledsoe does, and he bricks it. That was the issue with this version of Milwaukee. And those issues manifested themselves in the exact same way that they did with Holiday in the postseason last year. You can see that, Eric Bledsoe gives the ball up to Giannis. Okay, open lane to the rim. Goran Dragic does not care about Eric Bledsoe here. He's going to dig in. He's going to force a tougher shot here for Giannis than would be. There is a 0% chance that Goran Dragic is doing this if this player is Damian Lillard. And at the time, Milwaukee thought, hey, let's replace this guy with Jrue Holiday. Let's try and keep Giannis here, keep him happy, win a title, trade all these picks for him, and we'll be a much better team. And they were correct. But this issue that we're seeing right here is something that they tried to solve with the Holiday trade and now are trying to solve with the Lillard trade. And you can say what you want about Dame and trying to figure out how to be an off-ball player. He doesn't play off-ball a ton. He is an absolutely elite shooter and spacer and playmaker and creator, whether he's on the floor with Giannis, whether he's running the second unit without Giannis out there. It's hard to overstate the offensive upgrade from Damian Lillard going from Jrue Holiday to Damian Lillard, especially when it comes to spacing and dealing with guys trying to constantly deal with Giannis. It's going to be so much harder to deal with when you've got the pick a shooter plus Lopez, Giannis, Middleton, and Dame lineup out there. That group is going to destroy teams offensively at the end of games. It's going to be nearly impossible to guard because the best way you could do it was leave Jrue Holiday open, and he's not there anymore. At this point, I'm sure some of you are wondering, okay, what about the defense though? Like, you want to talk about an offensive upgrade, sure, but this is a huge defensive downgrade, and you're not wrong. Damian Lillard is not a very good defender at all. Here's Kobe White, not one of the better guards in the league, not known as a particularly, great offensive player. He's fine, but not one of the better guards in the league. We're just going to kind of chill. Oh, he got to the rim. Oh no, that's unfortunate. And it's just an easy layup. Now, obviously, this right here is not Brook Lopez. We're going to talk about that in a second. We're going to talk about the difference between whatever this defensive structure is and what Milwaukee does. But this is just, it's not very good effort. This is typical Dame defensive possessions here. We're going to go through a few of them. This is not abnormal, and it's going to be an issue in comparison to having someone like Jrue Holiday out there, especially from a matchup standpoint in the postseason. And I show you these things to recognize that this is not a perfect deal for Milwaukee. Again, Donovan Mitchell, obviously an outstanding player, but this is so easy for him. It's Nurkic back there, and it's just an easy layup and one. Here we go again. DeJounte Murray lets him get baseline. There's basically no contest. This guy's going into he's trying to make sure there's no, bounce pass to Capella for the layup. That's an interesting pause frame right there. DeJounte Murray, this is probably one of the easier jumpers, easier looks at the rim he's going to get the entire season. Dame, it's partially because he's not very big. Also, mostly, though, he just doesn't really care about guarding. These kinds of possessions are pretty common for him. Same thing here. This is Jaden Hardy in Dallas, someone that's still trying to find their way in the league. Probably some kind of miscommunication here between Nurkic and Dame. They actually leave somebody completely wide open there. Doesn't matter. This guy still gets to the rim. But here's the difference, though, okay? And here's why I think this can work in Milwaukee from a defensive perspective. Dame, there's not great effort there. I guess you could say he's kind of trying. And then there's Jusuf Nurkic at the rim. Jusuf Nurkic not necessarily known as an outstanding rim protector, ball screen defender, any of that. And this is way easier than it should be, but it's not all 100% on Dame. Not great rim protection here from Jusuf Nurkic. Maybe we could try a jump, bud. Maybe we could try and contest a little bit at the rim. That doesn't happen. Easy layup there. But now let's compare that to, similarly, not very good defense. This from Bobby Portis here. And then you've got Brook Lopez at the rim. Oh no, Franz Wagner blew right by me to the baseline. What's going to happen? It's going to be a layup. Just kidding. It's Brook Lopez there. It's important to understand how much of a difference there is in terms of rim protection and defensive ability from Jusuf Nurkic to Brook Lopez behind you. This kind of rim protection is something that Dame never saw in Portland and is going to make up for a ton of mistakes if Brook is able to stay healthy. Similar situation here. This is DeLon Wright, gets right to the rim, obviously because of the drop coverage here. Brook is just ready to go. They're not worried about DeLon Wright off the dribble three-pointers going to his left hand. That's not something they're concerned about, but easy access to the rim, doesn't matter. Brook Lopez there. This is something that, this is going to happen a few times for Dame where he thinks he gave up a layup and he didn't because Brook Lopez is there to block the shot, and he's going to be dumbfounded that this level of rim protection actually exists on his basketball team. This is something that he's just unfamiliar with. And so, yes, even though this is a significant defensive downgrade from Drew Holiday to Damian Lillard, I'm interested to see how that, develops in the postseason. Defensively, between Giannis, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, they have the structure that is just really, really going to make things so much easier on Dame. You're barely going to notice how bad he is defensively. As a team, I think they're going to be worse defensively, but not markedly worse, and they're going to be much, much better and much harder to stop offensively, because it's much easier to hide a bad defender like Dame in this kind of defensive structure with this level of rim protection than it is to hide this level of offensive spacing when your entire, offense relies upon Giannis getting to the rim. This problem is harder to solve than the Damian Lillard defense problem. And that is what the deal comes down to for Milwaukee. They wanted to upgrade. They wanted to get rid of their basically Eric Bledsoe problem all over again. And offensively, it's going to be incredibly difficult to stop this team. Will there be defensive issues at times? Yes, but I believe that the difference between those two things is significantly in the positive for Milwaukee.